Welcome to the HIT podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we're dropping into your feed with bite-sized, digestible, just brief, hopefully high-impact videos that if you're in the space, if you run a business, if you're in human resources, if you have anything to do with benefits, if you have anything to do with health insurance, technology, any of those sorts of things, we bring you tight episodes that are high impact and well worth your follow. We watch the numbers go up every week, so thank you guys for clicking like, for clicking subscribe, for sharing, for telling a friend, and for coming back every week. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions, and without any further ado, let's get right into it. This week's episode, we just want to briefly explore the idea of self-insuring your non-medical products, right? So within the health insurance portfolio, the leader in the clubhouse, the lion's share of the money is going to the medical. It gets a lot of our time, attention, focus, etc. But we're still spending a decent amount of money on dental, vision, some of these other products, right? Life, disability, the employee paid stuff, not so much. But I want to spend a minute and dive into the idea of self-insuring your dental and vision products. And really quickly to zoom out, let's do a quick 101 on self-insuring, right? So when you look at your insurance contract, it's sort of, either pregnant or not pregnant, right? It's either self-insured or fully insured, just based on the way it's filed with the state and with the DOI and with the regulators, et cetera. But there's more to it, right? So you want to kind of, okay, great. We got some technicality going on, but what are we really talking about here, right? What we're talking about is who sort of owns the risk, okay? So in an insurance relationship, you can pay the carrier and say, all right, we're going to pay you what's going to amount to more money. And then from there, that's it. We're not going to pay you any more, right? So if our belly buttons, our number of employees on this plan stay exactly the same somehow, month in and month out, our bill will not fluctuate. It will not fluctuate based on claims or utilization. How much my employees go to the providers, how much health care they seek, it doesn't matter. We sorted that out on the front end. You put us through underwriting. You estimated approximately how much you need for each tier, right? Employee only, employee plus family, employee plus spouse or children, etc. But if a person takes this plan in this tier, they pay this exact amount, or we pay this exact amount, right? We take some from their paycheck. We make you the insurance carrier whole. Maybe they have co-pays and deductibles. They have some member responsibilities, but us, the employer, we are not billed by doctors or providers as our employees use the plan, right? That's where we're transferring the risk onto you, the insurance company. So when someone goes to the doctor or the hospital, they bill you, right? You own that, Mr. or Mrs. Insurance Company, and you pay for that risk, right? So you, the employer, are saying, I don't want to own any claims liability. I don't want to own the risk as my employees go to the doctor, get MRIs, go seek healthcare, et cetera. I don't want to own any of that. I'm going to transfer that to an insurance company. Well, they're going to take it on, but they're going to charge you a little vig. So somewhere along the way, some employers start to look at self-insuring. When they say, you know what? As my employees go to the doctor, go seek healthcare, I'll pay that doctor. I'll pay that provider, right? Now, when you build it, typically what you say is, well, which doctors and providers are they going to go to, right? So the most common way to do this would be to go back to an insurer and maybe rent their network, right? So you can go to Cigna, for example, it's sponsor, shout out Cigna. You go to Cigna and say, hey, listen, we don't necessarily want to enter into an insurance relationship with you where we transfer the risk, but I would love, all that work you do with providers and healthcare professionals out there where they enter the Cigna network and someone gets a little ID card that says, I'm part of the Cigna network on it. Can we just rent that kind of network negotiation from you? And then when people go to the doctor and whatever, we'll pay the doctor. We'll pay the rest of the claim. My employee might pay their X dollar copay or deductible, and then we'll pay the rest to make the doctor whole, right? We'll self-insure that piece. So we'll rent the network from you from a much lower amount of money. So instead of paying the bigger amount that I would have paid to transfer the risk, I'm going to pay a small amount to just rent the network, and I'm going to save a ton of money. Now, I'm going to use that money to fund claims, and hopefully I save so much by just renting your network and not buying a fully insured policy that I have so much money left over I could pay all these claims and everybody's happy camper, right? To help make that more likely and not make employers kind of blow up from a financial standpoint, sometimes you buy what you call stop loss insurance, right? So you say, all right, we don't want any individual claim, right? So there's the individual stop loss or the specific, sometimes called the spec, right? We don't want any individual claim to have to cost more than a certain amount of dollars, right? On the medical side, maybe you put that at $50,000 or $75,000, right? So any one claim that costs too much money, now we are going to engage an insurance company, right? So we transfer risk, but only if a claim gets to a high dollar figure, then we transfer the risk. And or we buy aggregate stop loss insurance, right? Where we say, all right, we bought something for the specific side, but also in case it's not just a couple big ones that are costly, what if it's a bunch of like little and medium claims that add up to more than anyone expected, 20, 25% more than anybody expected. We bought this aggregate stop loss to where an insurance company is now going to perform in that instance also. So we're going to pay all the claims, but only up to the point that any one given claim costs the specific threshold, or also the aggregate hits this threshold, right? So that's kind of self-funding 101, where you say, all right, we're going to own the claims liability in exchange for paying less in premium to the insurance company. Gets a little scary on the medical side, right? Sometimes there's those $1 million babies, or sometimes there's those pandemic years, or sometimes there's those years where you estimate a certain amount of claims and you just didn't know how much you guys were getting in for. And maybe even if we don't get the, kind of ag accommodation parts of the contract, which I'll dive into nuance later, but the cash flow issues that you have where you're like, oh my gosh, like we didn't have overall more than we expected, but my God, in these months, seems like everybody was going out and we just had to shell out so much money. It was hard for our cash flow, et cetera, right? There's a lot that goes into self-funding that makes people kind of, gum up or back up or whatever. But first of all, today's self-funding is not yesterday's self-funding. There's a lot of great facets that we can look at on the medical side, but I want to back all this up and say, hey, let's take that principle of self-funding and maybe let's look at the dental and vision, right? Because again, the transfer of risk itself is not going to be dollar for dollar, right? If the carrier expects a certain amount of claims and they take on the risk for that amount of claims, they're not going to charge you just for the amount of claims. They're going to add a VIG for the risk as well, right? And so a lot of the times as you're transferring that risk, you're paying to sleep at night, sure, but there's some savings to be had there. And again, there's no $1 million babies in dental or vision, right? So that's where sometimes we look and we say, hey, if we first want to look into self-insuring some of our benefits portfolio, what if we start there? First of all, there's historically much better loss ratios, right? Meaning premium collected in and claims paid out, right? So the carrier's margin, the margins in general on dental and vision are going to be, a little bit safer than on the medical side, specifically vision. But also when you look at the plan designs, they kind of have all the stop loss you need baked into them anyways, right? So if you look at a dental PPO, you already have a plan design where typically there's a $1,500 calendar max, $2,025, right? So depending upon how your plan is designed, you might already have it to where each individual member can only ever cost, let's say $1,500, for example, in their calendar year maximum. So now you already know that's the most that you would have to spend, right? So by virtue of the way they're designed, or in the vision sides, right? Hey, you get, $150 to go towards frames every 2 years type of a thing. Or, we pay this much to go towards exams and, this frequency sort of a limitation, right? So both the dental and the vision have plan designs that are sort of beneficial, right? Whereas on the medical side, everything's got to be unlimited, right? It's like, look, when they hit their calendar year max, that's the most they have to pay. Some insurer needs to perform everything in perpetuity of that. It's kind of the opposite in dental and vision, right? Where it's sort of, hey, they get a bucket of money, they exhaust it. So the plans are already designed not to kind of, run through the ceiling. And again, they're sort of actuarially set with kind of better values baked into them. So sometimes this is a place where if you're looking to save 5, 10, 20%, yeah, it's the dental and vision, right? So you'd save, let's say 10, 15% on dental and vision, which is not, a huge part of your overall benefit spend when you count the medical, but it's big. It moves the needle a lot of times. It's a really good place to look, especially if you've got predominantly PPO products, which all vision is anyways. But on the dental side, because backing this up a little bit, in the world of how providers are paid, the HMO stuff can't really be self-funded because those are paid on capitation, right? Not getting too far into the weeds, but basically You roster a doctor, that doctor gets paid every month, whether or not you see the doctor, right? But if you've got mostly or all dental PPO, this is a great fit for you to look at. Vision, great fit for you to look at. And even on the dental side, sometimes A, you can set an HMO besides a self-funded PPO, but B, you can also build what they call an EPO, which is often self-insurance's answer to HMOs. It's kind of an HMO look-alike, right? An EPO is a PPO plan that performs in-network only. So there's no out-of-network tier, but that's likenable to an HMO. On an HMO, you're already told, and HMO, DMO, DHMO, right? We're talking, those types of capitated products. You're already told if you see the quote-unquote wrong provider, the insurance will not perform, right? So having a product that's in-network only is very likenable if you have a dental EPO to a dental HMO, because again, your members already know, listen, I have to see super specific about, which dentist I see or my insurance won't perform. But at least in this case with an EPO, you've got the whole network. You don't need referrals. It's not that referral-based access to care. So it really broadens kind of how they access care as long as they stay within the network, which again was the case on the HMO anyways. And you can set it up to have, a nicer kind of, benefits co-insurances, right? So that's kind of the difference between specifically in the dental world where it's a lot of co-pays on the HMO side, co-insurance on the PPO or EPO side. So that part gets a little bit where it doesn't get completely apples to apples. But if you put in maybe a high-low dental PPO or fold the EPO in there and or look at the vision, this is really something I encourage groups to do. So talk to your consultant, talk to your carriers even. A lot of them will write that kind of bid for you. I think it's a really nice way when we're looking to get creative. And this time of year, right? It's early in the year. So we're starting to have, for groups that are 1/1s, obviously not every group has a January 1st renewal. Many groups do. But times like now where we're way off the renewal, it's months and months down the road, times to talk, strategize, right? We sit down, we kind of have these pre-renewal meetings and we say, all right, what are some of the things we want to look at this year? And maybe, after today's episode, this is a bid for you to consider self-insuring the ancillary products, self-insuring the dental and vision, because there's oftentimes some good premium savings in there. And there's oftentimes not the risk that you thought when you hear self-funding and maybe if you're a little trepidatious about it, perhaps that's I don't want to say antiquated or outdated opinion or feeling anyways, right? We can talk about that on the medical side, but B, it's probably more because you're worried about risks that truly when we just look at dental and we just look at vision, those risks don't really exist just based on the plan designs. So something to think about, something to consider. Appreciate you guys coming week in and week out. We're trying to give these brief, high-impact episodes where we are a worthy follow for you. You come to the page, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and these little nuggets are just the kinds of things that we share on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday, we're dropping into your feed with new episodes. We can't do it without the viewers. Can't do it without the sponsors like TrueHue as well, and Montage Insurance Solutions. So we appreciate you guys so very much for joining us. That's all the time we have for you this week. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week you can.